If you're anything like me and so many other people, then you have likely heard a lot of really good, well-intentioned advice that maybe just doesn't work for you. And sometimes that feels frustrating, and sometimes we fault ourselves and think, oh my gosh, like the successful people are telling me to do this, and why can't I just do that? Why is that just not clicking for me? And so I want to talk today about how to let self-help help you, and to put some things into perspective so that when you are on this quest of personal development and personal understanding and growth, you can use the advice that you're given in a way that actually serves your highest good. My name is Trisha Veldman. I am a speech and confidence coach and spoken word poetess. I am founder of Powerful and Poised, and my pen and stage name is Patty the Poetess. So something I've noticed lately and just have been thinking about is how different we all are and how differently we all process things. And I know this sounds very basic, like obviously we're very different. But I've noticed, even in some of my latest videos, I've been giving this advice of like, oh, well, here's how you find your purpose. Like, here's what worked for me. And people have kind of pushed back of like, well, that didn't really help me, or that's not true in my case, which I really appreciate that honesty. And I have heard a lot of podcasters, especially lately, I've just been noticing how frequently some of my favorite teachers online say things like, we all feel this way, or I feel like everyone is going through blah, blah, blah. And it just isn't resonating with me. And I'm like, that's actually not my experience. And so I wanted to just talk for a few minutes about how to let what you're consuming and the content you're taking in and the advice you're receiving actually work for you, and not feel discouraged when someone else's advice doesn't land. So the first thing to remember is that every person, no matter how much of a guru they are, how advanced they are, is still a person speaking from their personal experience. We can also speak from things that we've witnessed in other people. So for example, when I first started coaching, I really only had my own experience to go by. And I said, well, I was a nervous public speaker and here's how I got over it. And that helped a lot of people who were also nervous public speakers and used the methodology I used and helped feel more confident public speaking. However, I have had a lot of clients who didn't have the same experience, who I said, well, here's what worked for me. And they're like, cool, that helped a little, but it didn't solve the problem the way it did for me. And so that led me to think about and analyze and really notice and observe the way different types of people learn and what's helpful for them. So the best coaches and teachers and gurus and podcasters don't only speak from their personal experience, they speak from what they've witnessed in other people and what they've noticed to be helpful in people who perhaps function differently than themselves. The other thing to look out for is if you are listening to a podcast, for example, and the speaker consistently says things like, you know, everyone feels this way, or everyone's going through that. Even if that's what you're going through, just bear in mind that that's not true, that everyone feels that way, because we all process things differently. And just know that if that person is saying that, which we all do sometimes, I know, I'm sure in a million of my videos I've said overgeneralizations where I assume people are processing things the same way that I am. But just keep in mind that that person is still a person and they might be overgeneralizing. So that means if they give advice and it doesn't work for you, that doesn't mean there's something wrong with you. And it doesn't mean you're doing it wrong. It is usually worth our time to try it on and try it out and see what works. But with a lot of self-compassion, understanding that what works for one person just won't work for someone else, and that's okay. But the more you learn and the the more you get comfortable taking pieces of information from these different people until you construct your own life and your own system that works for you, then it can be very frustrating when we're trying to follow a template or a structure written by and for somebody else. So for example, one of my favorite spiritual teachers, I've just noticed lately, he's been saying a lot of like, everyone does blah, blah, blah. And like, for example, what made me notice it is he was saying, we all wake up in the morning and our minds are running and we're so stressed. And then later in the day, we feel more relieved. And I'm like, that's not my experience. My experience, at least lately, has been I wake up in a really good mood and I do my morning routine and I start the day great. And then it's more in the afternoon and my anxieties start creeping up. And so it was totally opposite from what he was saying. And that doesn't make him wrong. It just means that's not relevant for every person. And so it's my responsibility, if I'm choosing to consume his content and listen to his message, to then adapt his message to me. Or if I feel like, this advice just doesn't fit me, I don't have to keep listening. And sometimes I feel like a sense of guilt or a sense of, oh gosh, I'm doing something wrong when that happens. And we feel like, but it works for all these other people. And I'm reading all these reviews and these testimonials and people are saying this works for me. Why doesn't it apply to me? And so really, I'm just sharing all of this to say, if it doesn't work for you, that's okay. That's actually beautiful because it means you have your own unique blueprint, as we all do. And again, keep in mind that person, no matter how much of a spiritual guru he is, he's just a person. And when he says we all wake up with this anxiety in the morning, what he's really saying is, I wake up with all this anxiety in the morning and I assume that's everyone else's experience also. Not wrong or bad of him, just something to note so that when he gives advice, I can remember just because he's giving this advice doesn't mean he knows my situation or knows what will work for me. And if it feels like it resonates, if it's worth trying out, I can try it out, but it doesn't mean I'm going to put all my eggs in one basket and expect that to work, because we obviously function and process life differently, as we should, as we all should and do. So if you are a coach or a teacher or you're giving people advice, I encourage you to listen out for times when you do that yourself. When you say, we all think this way and we all feel this way. And I know I've tried to become really aware recently about times when I say that, because it's so tempting when you're a coach and when you're giving advice and you're speaking from personal experience and you're like, here's how it works. And it's like, actually, it might not work that way. Now, part of why I've been thinking so much about our individual unique differences is I've been doing a lot of studying on Vedic astrology. I've talked about this a little bit on my channel before. If you're not into astrology, just keep listening anyway, because I will explain how this is relevant to what I'm saying. Now, Vedic astrology is the system from ancient India. It's what they still currently use to matchmake. And I've been reading just a lot about my personality and timing for my life, and so much of it resonates so deeply with who I feel that I am that it's making me so excited. And just reading about it, whether or not it's true, reading about it has made me realize that not everyone processes things the same way. So for example, according to my Vedic astrology chart, I am naturally wired for performance. So when I'm telling people and my clients and in these videos, well, here, just get over it, just have fun, just be confident, and obviously I get a little more detailed in the structure there, but when I give people advice, I have to bear in mind they might not have the same wiring as me. Astrology aside, I know that that's part of my temperament because I've watched these home videos. You can watch my latest video that I talked about what I love to do as a child and how that might help you find your purpose. But I watched these home videos and I realized this is really in my nature. And I have to keep that in mind when I'm working with someone or giving advice on this channel, that it's in my nature. It might not be in yours. And so if I want to provide really effective guidance and offer support, I have to not just think about my personal experience, but remember the things that I've witnessed work for my hundreds or thousands of clients that I've had the past 11 years coaching. Now, what I like about the astrology is that when I'm reading about it, it makes certain things make sense for me. And again, even if it's not true, if it feels true for me, it makes me feel good to recognize that, and then I can lean into it. The same can be said for personality tests. So you might want to take a Myers-Briggs 16 traits personality test, or a human design, or whatever it is, the big 5 personality. Those tests, I've done a video about this before, but the reason I think those tests are so helpful and illuminating is not because of what they say. So you don't want to take it as a prescription of, oh, well, my astrology birth chart says this, therefore that's how I am, because it might not be accurate. Okay, remember, we're interpreting things, and we're reading things likely off the internet that could be misinterpreted. Same with a personality test. Maybe one answer that you answered skewed the whole thing. So when you're reading it, don't take it as a prescription. Rather, notice how you react internally when you read or hear certain things about yourself. So if it clicks and it's like, oh, that is me, learn more about that part of yourself and use it to understand the blueprint of your personality. That's what I've been doing and what's been helpful. So if there's a part of the astrology that I'm like, oh, that doesn't really resonate, I'll still explore it and experiment, like, oh, well, actually, maybe that is true. But it just, in any case, gets us thinking about ourselves and introspecting quite a bit. And the same with personality tests if astrology is not your thing. But the other thing that it was been helpful for me is I will look up my friends or other people in my life's birth charts just to understand a little bit more about them. And it's actually been quite helpful because it makes me realize, oh, wait, they're processing things through this lens. I remember one time I had a big crush on this guy, and he definitely seemed to be interested in me, but he never asked me out, and I was getting really sad about it. And then I found out his birthday, and I read about his Vedic astrology chart, and according to the chart, it was like he is very insecure and shy around women, or that's the tendencies in the chart. Whether that's true or not, I don't know, because I never ultimately really met him. I just liked him from afar. But I remember it gave me such peace in the moment because it made me think, oh, maybe he does like me and he's just insecure. And that was an angle I hadn't even considered, because in my mind, everything's about me, and I'm like, he looks like he likes me, but he's not asking me out, therefore he must not like me. Therefore, there must be something wrong with me. And just reading that there's the potential that he does like me, but he has his own issues, is something I hadn't even considered. So I have no idea if that's accurate. I have no idea what his personality is like or what was going through his head. Maybe he really didn't like me. It doesn't matter. But the point is, it helps me remember that people process things differently. So all the relationship advice, for example, that says if he wanted to, he would. I know that's not always true, because you can learn that from talking to different people in your life. So any general advice that we hear, I encourage you to, one, question how much it resonates with you, and then start asking the people you know what they think about it and how they feel about it. Because, for example, the relationship advice, if he wanted to, he would, which is basically saying that if a man wants something, he will act on it. I know that's not true just from talking to my brother and talking to male friends and clients, and then reading about the astrology about this guy. This was years ago, but it was like, oh, maybe he does want to, but he won't because he's shy or socially anxious or whatever. But all of this is to say, when you're consuming or giving self-help information, advice, suggestions, teachings, whatever, always remember that the person communicating is just a person. They're speaking from their experience, and everyone processes things very differently. And so when you're listening to my channel, I hope that you remember that, that what I say may not work for you. And that doesn't mean it's necessarily bad advice. It just means it's me speaking from my experience or the experience that I've noticed works in other people. And when you're looking for a coach or a therapist or any kind of mentor, remember that too. And I encourage you to actively look for someone who isn't going to give all of their advice based on their personal experience. One way to tell is if they talk about themselves a lot. So if every sentence starts with, well, I, or when I did this, or in my experience, that's great. Take that in for what it's worth. And you might ask them, okay, cool. Have you noticed in any of your other clients something different that helped, for example? And then if you're the one in the coaching position, try to do that too. And it's something, like I said, I've been exploring personally, just so that I don't get in this tunnel vision of like, well, here's what worked for me, so this will work for you. It's here's what worked for me. Here's what worked for 10 of my clients. Here's what worked for one of my clients. Here's what I've seen universally tends to be helpful, but if it's not helpful, you might just be wired in this other way. So let's try this on. And then when you're consuming self-help, professional, or personal development information, remember that none of it is meant to be a prescription. Try on different things and see what clicks until you form your own personal, unique blueprint or system that works for you. Thank you so much for watching. If you have any thoughts or comments, of course, I love to read them. So please leave a comment below and have a marvelous day.